The killing of another woman.
Girl, you opened some blues on the girl this morning.
Again?
You take away your phone, she can't go on the road without tea, your family can't come over. You don't get your 1 cent now like you beating shit for tea, breakfast, and dinner.
And what you do?
Me, I don't get involved in man and no one's story.
But you don't get involved when she make the headlines though. Don't say if I the only.
What you want I do? He done ban me.
You your friend, you got a responsibility.
Wait, you want me confront him?
No, I want you to play your part to stop the violence safely.
Save violence against women no more. Report. Get help. Call 914.
The killing of another woman.
Hello, sister. I'm Val. I know what you're going through. I've been there too. Slaps, shouts, cuffs and kicks, endless licks. I thought I would never get out. This is not what love is about. Love is respect, autonomy, and equality, not emotional, financial, and psychological cruelty. There's no excuse for abuse. Say violence against women no more. Dial 914.
The killing of another woman.
How many more rapes, beatings, and killings must women endure? It's time for zero tolerance to gender-based violence. We shall no longer tolerate any form of violence against women and girls. And as a society, we pledge to create an environment in which they can lead safe and healthy lives. We call on our national and community leaders to stand firmly against gender-based violence and commit to mobilizing needed resources. Laws against violence to women and girls must be strengthened and implemented as we work together to provide free legal aid, shelters, counseling, and medical services for survivors. Say violence against women no more. Call the Domestic Violence Helpline 914.
This message was brought to you with the kind support of the Caribbean Vulnerable Communities Coalition.
Some words were national poet Martin Carter, who once said, and I quote, "Like the jig shakes the loom, like the web is spun the pattern, all are involved, all are consumed." End of quote. These words are very meaningful to our conversation, but also to the efforts that persons, organizations, and agencies have really been part of or have been doing. And so today we really want to hear from those particular partners and those particular actors who have all been trying to really move the needle in not only the prevention of gender-based violence, but also the response to gender-based violence, which has really been a pandemic in our country for far too long. Certainly, my name is Kobe Smith, and it's my pleasure really to guide the conversation this afternoon. To introduce our speakers, I would like to begin with Indra Constantine. Indra is the executive director at the Orchid Foundation. And then we have Akola Thompson. Akola is a communication consultant at ChildLink Incorporated. And last but certainly not least, we have Nariva Griffith. And Nariva serves as the social worker at the United Bricklayers there in Berbice. Good afternoon to all of our panelists and good afternoon to our audience. Before we actually started with the conversation or with the questions we have for today, I would like to give the speakers about 30 seconds just to say what really your organization is part of, or the work or the nature of the work that your organization is engaged in. So can we start with Akola and then Nariva and then Indra, and then we'll move on with the questions.
Sure thing. So ChildLink, Diana, is really involved in advocating for children, particularly as it relates to sexual abuse and other forms of abuse. More recently, we've been working on the Blue Umbrella campaign, 1,000 Boys initiatives, which focuses particularly on caring for young boys.
Great. And thanks to you and Charlene for the amazing work, Akola. Next, we'll have Indra. Indra, can you tell us a bit about Orchid?
Well, the Orchid Foundation is based in Region 3. The office is in Parfit Harmony. And in a nutshell, we deal with general social issue that is facing community and in the region. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Indra. Nariva?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nariva Griffith. I'm the social worker attached to United Bricklayers, also assistant supervisor on the CRY project, which is funded by ChildLink to work with migrants in our community in Region 6 to provide psychosocial and psychological help and assistance to the migrant that resides in New Amsterdam and the Upper Quarantine.
Thank you so much, Nariva, and thanks all to our panelists here for really letting us know, because we have persons that are joined or watching us rather on social media. And so it's good for them to hear what kind of services or the nature of your work, and so they could also reach out if perhaps they need some kind of assistance in one way or another. To really start the conversation going, I'd like to start out with a basic question. Because in our country, we've been talking a lot about violence against women, but then of course, we have a kind of like an academic framing of gender-based violence. And we hear a lot about GBV, gender-based violence in the media or across the board. And really and truly, a lot of persons don't necessarily understand the full meaning of it. And so I really want to start out with Akola, to really ask you, Akola, to let our audience know what really is gender-based violence and why do you think it persists? I mean, it's 2022 and we're still having these conversations.
Yeah, so gender-based violence really persists because we still have a lot of very strong cultural attitudes and belief systems surrounding women, children, any population that is seen as having less power. I'm not sure my language is not academic at this point, but yeah, basically the concept of power and those who have less, they're the ones who usually tend to face that sort of violence. So gender-based violence really kind of explores power dynamics, whether that is within relationships, whether that is against, whether that be queer relationships or heterosexual relationships. It can even be child abuse and different forms of that. So it's really any gender imbalance and the violence that can come out of that.
Certainly. And really thank you, Akola, for really underscoring, the point about the abuse of power. For us to say, I mean, everybody has power, but it's really how you use your power and whether that power really violates the rights and freedoms of other people. And so we really want to talk a bit about that today as we move forward with the conversation. And so to move along, I want to really ask how exactly is gender-based violence affecting children and other vulnerable groups? And so I want to bring in Nariva because Nariva, your work with United Bricklayers is really important and key. You really serve a vast pool of vulnerable communities of persons. And so I really want to start with you. How exactly is gender-based violence affecting particular?
Nariva, I think you can go ahead because Kobe seems to be stuck. So
yeah, in our community in Region 6, gender-based violence is affecting our community, especially where it comes to children who has lost parents to domestic violence. In a whole nutshell, we can do it alone. We got to do it with collaborating partners because these children is being put at risk. They are school dropouts. They've been exploited. You can find them doing child labor, they're working down the stelling, trying to gather a meal for them and their sibling and whoever they are staying with. So gender-based violence in Region 6 has put a lot where it comes to our children. Our children suffers a lot to that. However, even family, sometimes these children is being neglected by their immediate family if they lost their mother or if they lost their father. And the family neglects them, the family abuse them, the family sexually assaulted them also. We have a lot of cases where children is being assaulted by family member. They're being stigmatized by their family member. They're being neglected by family member. And sometimes you have to intervene. You have to go to child protection, get assistance for them, have them placed in a home of security, love, support. So gender-based violence has put a toll, not just in Region 6, but it's an entire countrywide something that is being going on. And we feel it for our children because they are the next generation. And you don't get them to open up right away. It takes a time for them to actually grasp of what is going on. Oh, mommy's not coming back because daddy kills mommy. So the child left without a mother, without a father. And then the family member going to say, oh, we will support them. But at the end of it, that child left with that stigma, that child left with the neglect, that child left to fend for themselves and their younger siblings that they have to look after. So it is hard where it comes to gender-based violence. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Nariva. I wanna bring in Indra. Indra, based on the work that the Orchid Foundation is really engaged in, what exactly are you seeing on the ground when it comes to the impact of gender-based violence on particular communities of persons, whether it be children or other vulnerable groups?
Well, living in Region 3, I can only talk about Region 3, but I know this is the general something that faces the entire world. Dealing with gender-based violence in my community that I live is not really affecting the children without the parents being involved, because what happened in my community, we find that a lot of domestic issue with husband and wife. We are facing that every day. And because of that situation, it affects the children. So whenever we sit to counsel those children, right? The children are so lost, they don't know what to say, whose side to turn on. So if we as adults, I always tell adults, whenever you're dealing with situation, please do not have it in front of the children because we are damaging those children, right? And in general, we are talking about gender-based violence. So we do not want to shun the men nor the women, right? Because it's gender-based violence. And too often, men are feeling neglected because we are always focusing on women and girls. So the men now, they have nowhere to go to, no one to talk to, because first of all, when they go to the police station, they're being mocked at, right? And laughed at. And they just shun in the corner. So what I do, I will reach out to both gender. I talk to individuals separate, men separate, women separate, and then we bring them together, right? And once we bring them together, we see how we can give options to both of them, right? And I dealt with cases whereby we have great results because it's just we as counselor in community, all we have to do is listen, lend a listening ears. Because a lot of time going to family members, all we're trying to do as family members, all we're trying to do is solve issue, telling them what to do. But if we just take our time and listen to them, we can bring peace within gender-based violence before it escalates. So that's my contribution towards gender-based violence.
Great. Thank you for that, Indra. Akola, I want to ask. Well, I'm not sure if you have any addition to make on the point of children, but in terms of other vulnerable populations, do you have any view as to how this scourge of gender-based violence is really affecting those particular groups of persons?
Yeah, so when it comes to the impact of gender-based violence, and I mean, anyone can be a victim of GBV, and that's something that we really need to continue harping on. I do think it's important, though, to kind of stress the fact that as much as we need to have conversations surrounding the impact of GBV on men, particularly, I think it's important that we don't also infantilize men because unfortunately, men do have power within the society, and that power can often be used in a negative manner. And there have been many cases wherein, men can utilize a situation or manipulate a situation where there's an attempt to balance in order to gain further control of the women. So I just think it was very important to highlight the fact that we can support men without infantilizing them and ensuring that they take responsibility for their actions. And I think the issue of the social and cultural attitudes definitely is one of the harmful ways in which it continues to impact both men and boys, men and women and children, and all these different groups. I do know that when it comes to more particular groups that we might not necessarily talk about, there's the LGBT community. There's a lot of violence within queer spaces. But because, of a lot of stigma and discrimination, this often does not really get brought up or talked about. And of course, they also don't really have a lot of supportive mechanisms because, as difficult it is for a heterosexual man to seek help, it's 10 times as difficult for a gay man to go and seek that help, if they're being abused by their partner. So it's things like that we need to think about when it comes to creating a very holistic approach to tackling gender-based violence because we have all these different populations, all these groups, and our approach cannot necessarily be the same, but there should be some very general guidelines within which we are able to meet everyone.
Great. Thank you for really laying that bare for us. Bare for there, Akola, especially on the point of accountability, because that's really something that we don't quite often talk about a lot in our society, in our spaces, as to how exactly do we have a conversation of accountability, but also having this kind of culture where particular groups of persons could actually participate in spaces to really not just prevent gender-based violence, but also to respond to it. So we know that gender-based violence is not just a criminal justice issue or a social justice issue. It's also a public health issue, especially in the context of sexual violence. And I know, for example, with the United Bricklayers, that our organization really coordinates testing, HIV testing, and other services to really respond to particular needs of persons when it comes to public health. And so my question really is, how can we ensure survivors access safe and quality HIV testing, treatment, and care in the context of an abusive relationship? I want to bring in Nariva as a social worker there from the United Bricklayers.
All right. Where it comes to our key populations, accessing our service to the HIV department, whenever we have clients who is found positive, we refer to the care and treatment. We also do follow up with our clients to make sure that they stay in the care and treatment. Also provide psychosocial counseling for them and their family. If they're being neglected, if they're going through any form of abuse, we follow up with our clients and provide that psychosocial support. Where it comes to GBV, we do education and sensitization with that particular family. Also, we work along with the police and the child protection also, where it comes to gender-based violence, and provide psychosocial counseling with the individual and family member. United Bricklayers as an NGO, not just work with the client who is receiving gender-based violence or violence towards them, but we also work with the perpetrator, do education with them, help them to understand that domestic violence or gender-based violence is zero tolerance, and to let them access help. We know that besides persons who access our service where it comes to HIV testing and counseling, there also we work with persons outside from that arena where they comes for gender-based violence counseling. Family would come in and we would have an intervention, and we navigate, we do referral pathway for them. And we try to say that, okay, men is stigmatized, they don't go to the police. So what we do is try to bring some aspects, get the information to them that, you know what, we know what you're going through. You go to the station, you might get this your stigmatized. So locking you up is not the fittest thing to do. But if we can able to work with this family to bring about change in this family, because we don't want to send our men to prison and just leave them there. We need to work with our men. We need to empower them. We need to educate them, bring them to forums where that if they don't know, they can know. So when we are looking at just one arena, we need to look to the entire arena that, you know what, a lot of programs are focusing in on women and girls, but there's not so much programs that focusing on how to empower our men, how to work with our boys, and culture and norm has put a lot of pressure that men don't speak out, they don't seek help. You'll find in programs 20 women, 2 men. So when we have the women is grasping all the information, how to empower themselves, how to educate themselves, our men is lacking of all of those information. So we need to work with our men. We need to empower them. We need to educate them, because if we don't, we are going to lose them. And the only thing that men will do when they feel burdened down, when they feel frustrated, is to lash out. And then is when everybody does see the last bell, but we don't see the first bell to seek help for these individuals. So thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing that, Nariva, based on your experience. One of the things I want to share, though, especially for the viewing audience, is for us to also understand that when we talk about counseling or psychosocial support, particularly in abusive relationships, that doesn't necessarily mean that persons are going to make amends and go back home and sing kumbaya. Counseling also could mean that the survivor understands that they're in a vulnerable situation. This situation is not healthy for them, and they have the opportunity to, of course, leave. Because oftentimes there's this misconception that counseling means, particularly in abusive relationships, that the survivor and the perpetrator need to come back together and just live happily ever after. In a lot of cases, that's not the case. And really and truly, we need to really shift the paradigm to have those persons who are in these particular relationships, those survivors, really decide and determine how they would want to move forward in those particular situations. So I want to thank you for sharing.
Indeed, Kobe, because we give options, we don't fix their problems. We can only give them option, and they can choose the option that is put forward to them. We can't fix their problems, that is up to them. And how they choose to deal with the situation once the option is being given to them.
Thank you for sharing that. Of course, I want to encourage our viewing audience to, of course, leave your questions and your comments in the chat on Facebook. And of course, we will share them with the panelists if you have questions or if you have comments, because we're trying to have a dialogue where we also receive feedback from the viewing audience as well. I want to come back to Indra to really talk about how we could, because we're in a pandemic, young people are now perhaps returning to school, and we have seen an uptick in school-based or school-related violence. So Indra, how exactly could different actors, whether it's the ministries of education, social security, and the others, how can different actors really ensure that we really have all hands on deck to really respond to school-based or school-related violence? Because school-related violence, falls under the umbrella of gender-based violence, and certainly, if we are seeing an increase in acts of violence in schools, it means that we have to do something about it. So, in Indra, how exactly could we have efforts or interventions in that realm?
Well, the other day I was talking to a few taxi driver concerning that. Let's be realistic. I love music. When I'm home, I play music all the time. The Ministry of Education is asking faith-based organization, NGOs, and so to come into school to counsel children, right? Concerning the violence that is happening in school. First of all, what we need to look at, I don't know if you travel with public transportation, right? This music that these buses, and it messes your mind up. Imagine you wake up. I always teach my counseling, have a positive energy. Go out there in the morning, always speak positive in your life, right? Imagine you going in a minibus and those music is boom, 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 right? And I can't understand what they're saying, right? And imagine when a child comes out of that minibus and have to go to school and somebody stole that child a pencil or just jammed the child, right? What do you think will happen? Let's be realistic. That child will obviously lash out, right? Because you already messed up your mind early in the morning. That is my point of view concerning with the violence in school, right? Because if your mind are messed up, sweetie, there is absolutely nothing you can do, right? And music is a thing, it's close to your ears, it's close to your brains, right? So we need to do something concerning this music in the minibus, right? But it's nothing wrong playing music, but the type of music, right? Play something that people can be motivated by, you learn. There are so many wonderful songs out there, music that a child can learn from, right? Motivational talks also. In the morning, they can play that. During the day, if they want, they can put their boom boom boxes on. But that's my point of view, how we can deal with this situation, because dealing with a messed up mind early in the morning, you cannot pray for somebody until because the mind is already messed up. That is my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Indra. Akola, any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on how we can really have interventions that are meaningful, that are sustainable to really respond to school-related violence?
Yeah, honestly, when it comes to school-related violence and generally any forms of violence focusing on public education, I mean, things that actually reach the population and the target groups you're aiming for. So even when it comes to, being in those buses, whether it's public programming that is played during the morning sessions focusing on bullying and other topics like that, I think those can be helpful, but things that are sustainable, they can reach the different target populations, particularly interior locations. I know radio is a really great avenue for that. So looking really at the way in which you can sensitize large sections of the population in a really sustainable manner, because I feel like we have been doing this over the years, but it's kind of ad hoc and kind of more one-off than any type of sustained advocacy initiative. So really looking at how that can really, be a permanent fixture.
Permanent, yeah, certainly. Thank you for that, Akola. I know that Nariva would have mentioned the gender-based violence referral pathway, which is really a system through which survivors can really access multiple services related to mental health support, counseling, medical services, etc. But on the point of access to justice, because it's one thing for persons to be, swallowed up into the pitfall of violence and dealing with that kind of situation and that kind of culture. But it's one thing when perhaps the system, and when I say system, I mean the justice system, isn't necessarily responding to persons' particular needs. And we've had, or we've seen rather, multiple reports of insufficiencies, unprofessionalism, discrimination, stigma, and the whole works when it comes to how persons access justice. And so I want to bring in Nariva. What are you really hearing on the ground about how difficult it is for some persons to access justice when they perhaps go to the police station or even when they approach the court? What exactly are you hearing on the ground, and what do you think we need to do to really make it a bit easier for persons to access justice?
To access justice where it comes to gender-based violence, reports to the station or the referral pathway is done where persons being referred to the station. The necessary documentation is being done along with is for the client to wait to access the court system. When they seek the assistance of the court, perpetrator may be put on a fine or removed from the home and sent back onto the streets. A lot of times you find that in the night, the perpetrator goes back and terrorizes that individual who is seeking help or trying to get out of that relationship or that marriage. But then there is not a whole where it comes to survival centers that these individuals can access. So either they remain in the home or they seek assistance to go to other family member, or they will have to patch up back. So there is not a holistic that where it comes to gender-based violence reported to the station and they goes to the court and they comes out back and the perpetrator feel more macho because it's a norm, it's a custom that, oh, she got to the station, police gonna fed up now, they're gonna just take the report, put it under the mat, and then it's sometimes the persons who's making the report has to keep running to the station to find out when is the court day. So it's a burden down, something that, sometimes these, the persons or the clients or individual, I should say, does get tired even going to the station or accessing the service because it's the same thing over and over again. Sometimes magistrate may see that one individual coming over and over, and then she might decide to say, you know what, let him go and spend a few months behind bars. But then what happens when he comes out is the same thing repeated itself over and over again. So we need to look at system where we can have some intervention, do more education, more sensitization, that court is not changing these perpetrators. Court system is not changing the domestic violence where women are feeling the blows. So we need to look to alternative intervention where we can work with these persons who is being affected with gender-based violence, because we're not seeing holistically, we're not seeing data, we're not seeing no sort of help for the perpetrator who continue abusing, whether it's the key population or the gender population or in our vulnerable community. So we need to go back to our drawing table and have some more intervention, have some more education, where it's to the police, how the intervention is being done, what is the next step when it goes to the court? What is going to happen to these perpetrators, that they can actually get it right, to know that, you know what, gender-based violence or beating up a woman, causing body harms to them, sexually violating these persons has consequences. Because for some of them, they feel like it's a road show. They don't think about it. It's just something that they model and thinking that it's okay to do what they're doing because they're custom of seeing the father beating the mother and the mother had to take it. So it's a custom that these men go through. It's nothing. So we need to look at something else, how we can get perpetrators' attention, how we can bring the message, as I hear Ms. Indra said, use the bus. We need to have, we in Region 6, working with schools, working in the health, health centers. We're going into clubs. We're going into the streets. We're bringing the education to individual, having one-on-one, just to have persons say, oh, miss, I know so is going on, but I'm afraid. I was at a meeting where a child was saying, a little 10-year child was saying to us, miss, so is going on, but I'm afraid of saying because I frighten the child mother look at me differently because she does give me the eye. But then if we don't go out there and if we don't bring the education to individual, then we would not know what is going on in our society, because everybody get this saying, I'm not me business, me no care what go on. But then you just hear when the man kill the woman, then it's everybody business to say, how long he doing it? How long he beating this woman? So we need to come off of those things. We need to stop saying it's not our business, because gender-based violence is all of us business. Thank you.
Colby, you're muted.
Sorry, I was saying thank you to Nariv, and thank you for the work that you're leading there in Norbeast, and thank you for speaking so passionately about those particular issues. I actually wanted to bring in Akola, because Akola, I know that you would have done some work on the documentation of these particular cases of gender-based violence. But what are the gaps, that you would have seen in this whole approach to accessing justice based on your experience and your background, Akola?
Yeah, honestly, the main gap really is just dealing with the systems that are already in place when it comes to the police, the relevant counselors, because one, you don't necessarily have persons that are really trained in the area. And even if they do have some training, it's not at the level that it needs to be to ensure that it's a safe space for survivors to be able to come forward and have their cases actually move forward the process. And also I do know there's a problem with the resources when it comes to these departments. So you might have severe underfunding, so you don't have as much police officers within that specific area. And so you don't really get the type of attention or focus that gender-based violence necessarily needs. So that really was one of the main gaps. I do know that since then, there have been a lot of effort when it comes to just kind of resourcing GBV units within the police departments and trainings, but I still don't believe it's where it needs to be. And a lot of that really comes down to not only resources, which is important, but a real shift in the cultural attitudes, which is something we've been talking about from the beginning, because there have been cases wherein you have all these training sessions, you have the informational campaigns, people are just really stuck in their ways and their beliefs when it comes to these types of issues. And of course, when you have them in positions of power, like police officers and caseworkers, then those unfortunately tends to come off on survivors themselves, which makes it a very uncomfortable experience for them. So those really were the main gaps that we acknowledged.
Great. And as a follow-up to that, Akola, on the point of how we could give more support to the family, and family is really broad. I mean, family would be parents, children, etc. But then also we have the issue of how we understand the convergence of the family with the other or the broader society. So that whole conversation is broad. But on the point of the family and how we could give more support or support services, what really are the key services? If you were to list some key things to really improve how families, or how the family as an institution remains strong and fortified, but also to really respond to the challenge or the crisis of gender-based violence, what would you say would be those key services that are really needed and are really important?
Okay, yeah, that's a really big one. Because the family unit, we tend to look at things in isolation when it comes to gender-based violence and bullying and all these different things. And so we might see children behaving violently and think that's just a child, but often it's just them replicating behaviors. And a lot of time that has to do with the family. So the family unit is very important to focus on. I think one of the main areas is psychosocial support, ensuring, because like people come with their traumas, they come with their own histories. And a lot of people become parents without any understanding of how to be a parent or even addressing the traumas that they themselves would have gone through as children. So it's just a pattern that's constantly being replicated within the family unit. Another aspect is economic empowerment, because while there's not a very direct link to poverty and gender-based violence, those who are poor are more vulnerable to experience and enact gender-based violence. At least statistically, that's what we see.
Yeah.
And so ensuring that there's that type of economic empowerment, access to education, because that really is a big barrier when it comes to just ensuring that people not only have clothing, food, shelter, all the basic necessities, but education is also very important. And I think just informational campaigns. I am a big believer in the importance of information. I believe it can really shift the thought patterns of populations. So ensuring that we have these conversations with families and more removed from the very small spaces that we've been individually working in, but a more broader approach, whether that's bringing in the ministries, the different NGOs and community groups. I think those would be really helpful. But yeah, focusing on psychosocial support for families, economic empowerment, and education.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that, Akola, especially on the point of economic empowerment, because, part and parcel of the issue of entrapment, where some survivors find it actually difficult to leave, is because they're unable to leave because the person who's paying the rent and paying school fees for children and all of that is the abuser. And a lot of times we just tell women and girls to leave, but it's difficult in some cases for them to do that. And so how do we as a society, how does the government, how exactly could some NGOs really fill the gap that's really there? And that's a conversation that has been happening. And I'm aware that through the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security, they have an empowerment fund that persons could reach out and really seek information, as you were saying, Akola. Because it's one thing for us to have, these services available, but if people don't know that they exist, then, that really don't make a lot of sense. And so we really need to ensure that persons are aware that these things are available, but how exactly are we making it accessible to those particular groups of persons? So thank you for sharing that, Akola. I want to bring in Indra, because of course we've been talking about, families and parents and giving information, but a lot of things, in some ways, we don't necessarily give the information in ways that people could actually understand. I remember a couple of months ago, I was in Region 1, well, it was last year, and I was talking to some persons in Region 1, Maruka, Santa Mission, and so on. And particularly in Santa Mission, I was talking, I can't remember what it was, but this guy said, sir, I don't understand anything you're talking about because, I didn't go to school, and these big words you're talking, I really don't understand. And that was a full circle moment for me, because sometimes we seem to think that, we understand the issues, or that we can understand to communicate it. But sometimes you really need to break it down, not just in a simple way, but really, 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 really simple. And so, Indra, based on your experience, how can we engage with families, really moving away from the whole academics or the academic kind of words and statements to really come down to simple language? How exactly can we do that? Is it that we need to do more on the radios, on television, or we actually need to visit homes in the context of COVID where we could perhaps wear a mask or whatever? But how can we bring the information to people who really need it in ways that they can understand on their particular level?
Simple, my dear. Talk language that they understand. If they understand, give me some water, you talk, give me some water, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the thing is that the other day I went to a doctor and the doctor was telling me some long word. I said, excuse me, I'm not a doctor. I haven't studied anything in doctor. Can you please in a nutshell tell me if I have cancer? And stop telling me those long words, you know? So simple like that. Being a community, working in a community where we have the down to earth people, the very low, the poor people, right? When I go by them, I will have a chair. I will sit on the ground with them. If they sit on the step, I sit on the step. I be there as, be just like them. Show them that you care for them. Show them that you love them. You talk the language, you know. Sometimes we want to let people look at us that we are all up there, but we are not, because at the end of the day, I tell people we all human beings suffer some form of abuse, right, in life. We are not perfect. And concerning radio, not everybody have access to radio. They don't listen to radio. For me, I don't have radio. I don't listen to the radio. I have my TV. I have my cell phone. So if we could do things like, for example, the Ministry of Human Service, which is doing a wonderful job. But then I said one day I have to speak to her. Simple language. If your husband beats you, call for help. Right? Let's be normal, because an average person, the most people in this country here are school dropout. You know, they don't know what violence is. They don't know what abuse is. But if you put it in simple form, if your husband beat you, reach out. I think it's 941 is the number.
914.
Oh, 914, sorry. Right? So some of them don't know. Miss Indra, we didn't know that you had a number like that, you know, and we didn't know that you could have go to the police station. Even when you go to the police station, my brother, it's like these police need training. Right? They need training, because sometimes I see these police officers writing a statement that primary 2 levels child can do a far better job than a police officer. I'm being honest, you know, and that is things that we always get in the way with. We always want to be this person that is up there and not having time, always saying that we're doing, but doing what? We are not reaching to the person level, right? Everything that we're doing and the words that we're using are for the upper classes, not for people like me and you, right? So I hope that answers your question.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that, Indra. Nariva, you have any thoughts on that based on your experience in Berbice with you United Bricklayers? How exactly do you engage with families to have them understand not just the services that you provide, but how do you try to engage with them to really, you know, respond to these particular issues, whether it's gender-based violence, the issue of HIV, and the importance of testing? How exactly do you engage with them for them to understand that?
Kobe, we at grassroots level. We walk the walk and talk the walk just like the grassroots person. If them say water, we say water. If they say, oh, we come and we see your house dirty, we ain't gonna scorn you, because at the end of it, it's not about us. It's about helping that family through the crisis that they're going through. So bringing ourselves is like, if we are higher than them, it's not going to solve the issue. But walking in that person's shoe, helping them to understand that the first thing is person see gender-based violence or domestic violence is about just hitting or causing actual body harm. What we must also emphasize that there are different forms of violence. So when we're talking about gender-based violence, we also should know that gender-based violence is not just about hitting. We have sexual abuse, we have verbal abuse, we have economic abuse, right? So we as grassroots level at United Bricklayers talk just like how the person talk. Auntie, my man a beat me, we're up sit down like we talk now. Come tell me what go on with you. So we bring ourselves to let that person don't feel that, oh, we come from the university, we know all the big words, and they don't understand one thing what we saying. So we use our Creolese. We get them to understand that we just like them. We can talk the Creolese and we can understand your level. Not because we went to high school or we went to university, we gonna use all these big words and the person understand anything that we are saying. So we understand, we know how to do the work and how to do the talk when it comes to helping individual, key population, general population, person who is asking service for HIV, person who before we sit them down, we go through step by step what is the referral pathway, where the share confidentiality has to share with doctor and client privilege. All of that we sit down and we explain to our clients so we don't let them feel that they're alone into this. We go through it with them, seek help with them to the end. And sometimes, yes, it gets frustrated, but we don't allow that to hinder us from getting our work done. We still continue, whether with finance or without finance. It's all about getting the work done, helping the individual who is seeking help and making sure that they feel comfortable, satisfied, and that they can able to move on, giving them the option that, oh, if you leave the man is your option. But whatever choice you choose, we are there to help you. Also, we can able to seek additional referral pathway help where it comes, if you want to move from the community, go into a shelter, we can provide that service also for you. So that is what we do in Region 6 at United Bricklayers.
Thank you for sharing that, Noriva. But what I really wanted to ask, though, I mean, in the context of COVID and in the context of this, you know, the inflation and how the economy is really going now, particularly for working class people, if family members are unable to reach out or come into your physical space, is it that you provide visits to homes? How exactly is that done? Because some persons in families, I mean, if you're not working, you may not have transportation money to come to United Bricklayers or even ChildLink for counseling. I wanted to know what kind of mechanisms at the organizational level, what are some ways that the organizations are really making it easier for families?
Okay, if the clients cannot come to the center, we go to them. Whether finance, if there's a project that provides traveling, then we use that. If there's not a project that provides traveling, we still pool our resources out of our pockets to go wherever that client is living. If it's an NGO that is close by, if it's Region 3 or Region 4, then we seek assistance from that NGO that we have a client that is living close to you. Can you assist us with this client? Right? So we have that cooperation and that collaboration with other NGOs, but our main focus is getting the help for that individual, whether if they can come or whether if the client receive the help, whether they come or we have to go. But we don't put them on a hold or let them wait until we are available. We always available and we go to them. We provide that service. We don't let them feel that, oh, it's just for the hierarchies and them are just a citizen in the community. So whenever we are available, no. If they can come, we go. We provide, and that is our main focus.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Akola, any efforts by ChildLink to make it easier for persons who are unable to come in, family members, mothers, survivors, anything really?
So in the context of responding to cases of violence, you're asking?
Yeah. Like for
Okay.
example, if someone finds it difficult to come to your office, are there alternative ways for them to engage with you to make it easier for them? Because some persons find it difficult to come out.
Yeah, for sure. So I do know that ChildLink has the child advocacy centers in the different regions, and they liaise directly with community members. So there's that open line of communication. If there is a case wherein someone might not be able to come in, they're able to respond to that appropriately. So there is that in place.
Definitely. Indra, I want to give you the opportunity as well. Is there what ways in which, or what are the ways that the Orchid Foundation make it easier for persons to access services? We're talking specifically about the family, yeah.
Okay, almost everyone I think in this community have my number, and they know the work that I'm doing. When they can't get here, and they will call me and say, Miss Indra, do you have time to go with us to court or to the police station? I go with them once I have the time. If not, I refer them to somebody else and they go. Once you have the love for doing things, it comes easily.
Definitely.
Thank you.
All right, so we're down to the final 3 minutes of our show for today. And so I want to give each of our panelists about 45 seconds to really tell us final words to our viewing audience. How can persons give of support to families? I mean, the idea of a family as a unit. You have children, women, girls, LGBTQ plus persons, etc. How can we as a society give more support to families? As your final thought for the afternoon. Let's start with Akola, and we come down to Indra and then Nariva.
Sure. So honestly, support, I believe, needs to be very practical, because when we talk about gender-based violence, we tend to talk about educating women to leave and empowering them, yes, but often leaving is not only the most dangerous time, it's also the hardest when it comes to supporting themselves and finding the different things that they need to actually make a good life. So ensuring that there's practical support for women, children, other survivors of violence, whether that looks like housing or it looks like providing some small money every now and again to ensure that they're able to buy food and clothes or get transportation to and from work. Or it can even look like childcare responsibilities, particularly in the context of women. If there's an auntie available who can really look at the child while the mother is at work, that can be really, really helpful in ensuring that women don't necessarily feel as burdened or under pressure. So ensuring that we have those very practical support mechanisms in
ears to someone that come knocking at your door. You can always refer them to different centers, but just lend a listening ears. All we need is a listening ears, somebody to listen to us. And one last thing, no one is safe until everyone is safe. So you never know what will happen to you next. So always be with someone. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Nariva, if you can give us 20 seconds, and I'm sorry to
all right, no
limit your
problem,
time.
Kobe. For me, treat all the same equally. More empowerment and education sessions for men. Better family support, not just for the survivor, but also for perpetrator. And we can't leave the perpetrator. So work with all individuals to make sure that we can have a better society and better individual. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you all so much. This has been an episode of Let's Talk Gender-Based Violence, production by Marunda Incorporated with the kind support from the Caribbean Vulnerable Communities Coalition, CBC. We want to thank our panelists for today, Indra, Constantine, Cola Thompson, and of course, Nariva Griffith for sharing so candidly and openly with us about their thoughts, how we could really respond to those effects of gender-based violence on families. Certainly, we encourage you to connect with us next week, next Sunday from 3 p.m. for another episode of Let's Talk Gender-Based Violence. We will be talking about economic empowerment and how we could give more support to some gender-based violence. We want to thank you for joining us, and we encourage you to continue to stay engaged. Like our page, Marunda's Facebook page, leave your comment, leave your questions. We can, of course, follow up with you. If, of course, you need particular support from any one of the organizations here, we encourage you to, of course, reach out to them individually on social media. You can get to message them, or also you can seek their phone numbers there. We want to encourage you to remain safe, and also encourage you to continue to participate and engage in this whole struggle for us to really respond and really prevent and really eliminate gender-based violence across our country. My name is Kobe Smith, and it's been my pleasure engaging with you today. Until next time, bye-bye.